Jack and Christina had a blissful childhood. Their father held a relatively high position, which allowed their mother, Lily Andreevna, to devote all her time to the children. As Jack grew a bit older, he realized that his mother, although a capable homemaker, lacked practical life skills. Lilia Andreevna had briefly worked as a secretary, but after meeting Michael Ilyich, Christina and Jack's father, things took a different turn. Michael Ilyich had risen through the ranks during the privatization wave of the 90s and acquired a small dairy plant for a bargain. Within a decade, he had built his food empire. Despite economic downturns, food always remained in demand, and his strong business acumen, honed during his time as a Komsomol leader, greatly contributed to his success. When Lilia became pregnant, her husband insisted she manage the household and provided for the family. The young woman was content with this arrangement and enjoyed her role. She could buy whatever she pleased, and she didn't have to bother with cooking. 2 years after Varia's birth, Jack came into the world. Michael hired a nanny and a house assistant to support his wife. This arrangement allowed Lilia to focus on herself and occasionally attend to the children. Varia grew up to be a robust and spirited girl. Whenever the nanny complained to her parents about her mischievous behavior, Lilia would only sigh and roll her eyes, while Michael would laugh, saying, "Well done. She won't let anyone take advantage of her." In contrast to his sister, Jack was a calm and delicate boy. For some reason, their mother favored her son more than her daughter, and so they grew up as Daddy's little girl and Mommy's boy. While Varia pursued taekwondo, Jack played the violin. At times, their father observed his son and shook his head, wondering how he ended up with a son who resembled more of a girl than a boy. However, their mother always came to Jack's defense. He was a sensitive and creative young man. As the children grew up, Christina, despite assisting her father with the holding, and Jack, struggling through college, focused on his creative career. Thanks to his father's connections, Lily Andreevna arranged for the young man to join a fairly prestigious orchestra. It was a small theater, but it provided decent living, and Jack received financial support from his father. Varia, on the other hand, never thought much about the family. She followed in her father's footsteps and was solely interested in her career, expanding the business, new market outlets, numbers, and business plans. Lilia was anxious that she might never have grandchildren, but then Jack surprised his parents with news. "Mom, Dad, do you have any plans for this Saturday?" he asked. "I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful girl." His father, tearing himself away from the stock market news on his monitor, inquired, "Who is she?" His mother, worried, asked, "I hope they are decent people." "Don't worry," her son assured her, giving his mother a hug. "Kira is a wonderful girl, and her parents are perfectly respectable. Dad, she's a professor, and her mother owns a beauty salon. By the way, we met when I was performing at her mother's salon opening. That's how we got to know each other." "I told you that Jack is more inclined towards family values," proudly declared the mother, unlike Christina. "Christina works like a wolf," the father erupted, "while Jack, on the other hand, is a talented violinist," his mother promptly retorted. "Well, he's talented, but he's always asking for money, Mom, Dad. Don't argue," Jack interjected. "The orchestra is going on tour soon, so I won't be begging for wedding funds on the weekend." On weekend, the parents got to know their future daughter-in-law at a cafe. Jack was delighted that Kira made a favorable impression on his parents, even though he could sense that his father was already contemplating how to expand his future wife's family business. His mother, meanwhile, admired the girl's attire and hairstyle. Soon, the young couple had a lavish and unforgettable wedding celebration. The parents spared no expense, wanting to make this day memorable for their children. The guests were shocked when the bride's father handed the newlyweds the keys to an apartment. Later, when everyone at the dance floor, the bride's father took his son-in-law aside. "Jack, don't be upset, but I already arranged the apartment for my daughter before the wedding, so there would be no disputes over its distribution," he said. Viktor Sergeyevich added, "I don't plan to divorce Kira. She's my destiny." Jack, accustomed to a life of abundance since childhood, shrugged, finding such conversations trivial and out of place. An idyllic period can't last forever, and difficult times arrived for the Grigoriev family. Running a business without engaging in shadowy schemes became increasingly difficult as competitors invited their dairy empire and circumstances changed. However, Michael's company came under global scrutiny, revealing serious tax violations. Criminal cases were opened against the management of the holding. Father Christina was taken to the hospital with a heart attack. The children often visited their father in the hospital. One day, during a moment of improvement, he asked his children not to abandon their mother, who was not particularly adept but kind-hearted. Of course, Daddy, we'll take care of everything, reassured Christina. Mom, you'll see, we'll get along with the grandchildren. Jack tried to cheer him up. And we have grandchildren on the way, he added proudly. However, Jack didn't notice the venomous look his sister shot at him. 3 days later, their father passed away. Lilia Andreevna was consumed by grief, unable to comprehend how to continue living without Michael's support. Christina, too, mourned his loss, but not for this reason. Her father had assisted her by taking full responsibility for the tax offenses, but it was clear that the holding had gone bankrupt. The woman needed to find a new job. With her current reputation, it wouldn't be easy. This was very untimely, as Varia had just taken out a mortgage. She hoped that having a nice apartment would make her a more desirable bride and finally allow her to start a family after her husband's passing. Lilia seemed lost at first. They had to let go of their housekeeper, and the remaining funds wouldn't last long. She had long abandoned cooking and housekeeping and turned to expensive beauty salons and social events. The woman simply couldn't afford to attend such gatherings. I used to support my husband, she lamented, but now Lilia couldn't do anything by herself. Her daughter couldn't assist her as she had before. Desperate, Lilia turned to her son, Jack. You have to understand that I'm in desperate need of money, she pleaded. Jack, irritated, gathered his things and left. Later that evening, Varia came to her mother. Mom, I won't be able to give you money as before. I have a mortgage, and my salary is much less than what I earn in the holding. But what am I supposed to do? Lilia said, tears welling up. Mom, you could get a job, even as a concierge or a nanny. It would be a supplement to your meager pension. Father caused enough trouble. Let him rest in peace. Lilia pondered this as Varia left the room. She wondered how she could convince Jack to sell his apartment to Jane and use the money to help pay off her mortgage. They could move back into the family home and support her. She then gathered her things and headed to her son's house to broach the subject. Jane manages both her work and home quite well. She wasn't spoiled when it came to chores because in their family, everyone had to pitch in. That's why Mom taught Kira how to handle all the household tasks. I help out too. Putting the laundry in the washing machine or vacuuming the floors is not that complicated, Jack chuckled. But you need to take care of your hands. I'm not chopping wood. Men can help with household chores too, Lilia replied, just like your father. But don't get me started about your father. He was quite the home builder. He enjoyed everyone bustling around him, and he used to appease us with money and gifts. But what about spending quality time together, like going for a walk, fishing, or taking trips? That was unheard of. He'd just give us a banknote. That's the extent of paternal love, Jack said, shaking his head. Lilia asked how they managed when their little one arrived. Kira had already planned everything. She would take remote work when the baby grew a bit. I'll manage it myself. You know my schedule. Rehearsals in the morning, concerts in the evening, and I have free time during the day. Have you ever considered moving in with me? Why don't I help Kira with the baby? My apartment is spacious, and they won't feel lonely there, Jack suggested. But why would you help? Lilia inquired. Kira has a lot to handle, starting from scratch at her new job. It's time to think about my personal life. She's not a child anymore, Jack responded, thinking about a life filled with love and new responsibilities. Honestly, if we move, we'll not only have to take care of the baby but also of you. So no, Jack firmly stated. Lilia thought long and hard about what to do to convince Jack to help his sister. While strolling in the park, she ran into her elderly friend, Ilona. They used to meet often, but now Lilia lived as a recluse. After her husband's death, their so-called friends had turned away from the impoverished family. Hello, dear, Lilia greeted Ilona with a falsely cheerful tone, and Ilona responded with an equally insincere smile. As she looked at her well-groomed, elegantly dressed friend, Lilia couldn't help but feel envious. Of course, Ilona still led a life of luxury, and her son never stopped pampering her. Her young secretary hadn't disrupted the comfortable life she'd grown accustomed to. The lady sat on a bench, and Ilona let her little purebred dog roam while she initiated the conversation. Lilia, what happened to Michael was a shock for all of us, and he's facing complete ruin, Ilona empathized. Lilia couldn't hold back her tears. Yes, it's a total disaster, and he's fallen apart, she said. Does your son at least help you? And they'd all abandoned me. Vyacheslav, too, initially dismissed the housekeeper, which left me with a meager allowance. By the way, he has a family to support. He offered me a job, can you imagine? Lilia wryly smiled. I can imagine, Ilona replied sympathetically. At first, Varia also offered me a job to find work, Lilia continued, so I bribed a doctor in the clinic. She wrote up some dreadful diagnosis for me. I showed the papers to my son, and the doctor confirmed that I needed expensive treatment. Now he gives me money for treatment every month, and I have to share it with her because she's the one he pays. But it's enough to get by. I even secretly hired a college student to help with cleaning. You're a genius, Ilona exclaimed, and good actress too. Remember how I dazzled you, Lilia replied, buoyed by her friend's praise. Motivated by her friend's advice, Lilia quickly went to the clinic her former friend had recommended and found the head physician, Dr. Elizaveta, a graceful middle-aged woman. Dr. Elizaveta agreed to see Lilia. I must say, young people would enjoy your health, the doctor remarked in surprise. That's not the issue, to be honest, Lilia impatiently interrupted. I'm here for a different reason. You see, I want my son to persuade his wife to sell her apartment. That way, I can help my daughter pay off her mortgage, and she'd graciously support me as I deserve. But you understand, don't you? Don't worry, I won't hold it against you. We can draw up an agreement as if I lent you money. As soon as the apartment is sold, Dr. Elizaveta began, offering her assistance to Lilia. And I pay for your services. Elizaveta merely shook her head. She hadn't expected such cruelty towards her own children. But the doctor was a greedy woman and agreed to the deal. On a weekend, Lilia invited Varia over and shared her plan. Mom, what if Jack and Kira find out? Varia worriedly asked. They won't find out. I took Jack to music school and put in so much effort. Let's say this wasn't you but the nanny, and there you go, a token of gratitude. No, I've made up my mind, Lilia firmly declared. When the fake test results were ready, Lilia summoned her son with an air of impending doom. Son, I have some bad news, she said with a voice full of despair. I'm mortally ill, and I need a very expensive operation. Are you sure? Jack carefully read the doctor's report and upon seeing the cost of the surgery was taken aback. All right, Mom, I'll figure it out. Where will we get the money? What's there to figure out? Talk to Kira, let her sell her apartment. It will cover the operation, Lilia replied. In the evening, Jack initiated a difficult conversation with Kira. Kira, we have a serious problem. My mom is mortally ill, and she needs a huge sum for treatment. Where will we get it? I'm not supposed to ask you, but you must understand. It's my mom. Kira contemplated the situation. Maybe we should consider selling the apartment, she said reluctantly. Okay, Jack, I'll think about it, Kira decided. But before we decide, let's have your mother checked at your dad's acquaintance's clinic. The possibility of another outcome hadn't crossed Lilia's mind. Jack, coming home with unexpected news, filled her with joy. Mom, we'll be going to the hospital tomorrow morning. I've arranged for us to visit the clinic where Dad's acquaintance works. They have excellent equipment. I just don't fully trust private medicine, Jack explained. Why do I need to be reevaluated? Lilia groaned. I showed you the test results. We can't afford to waste time. I need that surgery. Do you want me dead? No, Mom, but I want to be sure the doctors didn't make any mistakes, Jack calmly replied. Panicked, Lilia immediately called Kira and Christina after Jack left. Jack wants me to get a second evaluation at a different clinic. What should I do, Kira? Like I said, my brother isn't a fool, and his wife isn't any better. Christina responded. Why not just come clean with them? I've already told you, Mom, it's time to find a job, and about the money. Lydia remained convinced that she could handle it until the very end. Naturally, the revaluation made her doubt the initial results. She started thinking, maybe there's no illness at all, and I don't need the operation. In the evening, Jack brought Lilia back home and called his sister with the news. Good news, Mom doesn't need surgery. She's healthy, he said. I know, Christina replied with exhaustion in her voice. Where did you get that idea? We only just got back. Jack was puzzled. Well, let Mom tell you all about it. Although astonished, Christina hung up, while a distressed Lilia sat in the kitchen, unsure of how to proceed. Jack then turned to his mother. Mom, is there something you'd like to tell me, son? But I only wanted everyone to be happy, Lilia whispered. What were you thinking? The woman couldn't hold back her tears and crying, told Jack about her ingenious plan. So you wanted me to persuade my wife to sell her apartment to pay off Varia's mortgage, right? Yes, Jack, that way it would be better for everyone. Your sister could support me, feeling obliged, his mother replied angrily. For everyone's sake. You were only thinking about yourself. Jack couldn't forgive his mother's devious plot for a long time, and they hardly communicated. Eventually, Lilia had to find a job. Though her salary as a cultural center methodologist wasn't substantial, She had to adjust to a more frugal lifestyle. She reconciled with the family, especially when Christina got married. She met a worthy man and married him, despite the family having to fend off a demand for money from the doctor, who had presented a signed agreement and started demanding money. However, Jack threatened to report her to the authorities for false documents and extortion, and she backed down. Soon after, Jack and Kira welcomed a lovely baby boy into their spacious apartment, which provided enough room for him and their future children.